The rain hammered against cracked pavement as Evan Brooks pulled into the empty laundromat parking lot, his headlights catching the silhouette of a teenage girl huddled against the locked door, soaked, shivering, and utterly alone. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. But in that moment, watching her pull her knees tighter against the cold, he made a choice that would shatter both their worlds and rebuild them into something neither could have imagined. This is the story of one night that became a lifetime of kindness that cost everything and gave back more. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The wipers beat a steady rhythm against the downpour as Evan Brooks squinted through the windshield, his ancient Honda's headlights barely cutting through the sheets of rain. It was nearly midnight on a Tuesday, and the streets of Millbrook were deserted. He'd worked a double shift at the warehouse, loading boxes until his shoulders screamed, and all he wanted was to get home, to Ruby, asleep at Mrs. Chen's place next door. Then he saw her. At first, she was just a shape hunched against the locked door of the 24-hour laundromat, which apparently wasn't actually 24 hours, despite what the faded sign claimed. Evan almost drove past, almost convinced himself it wasn't his problem, that someone else would help, that he had enough to worry about. But he didn't drive past. He pulled into the empty parking lot, the Honda's engine coughing as he shifted into park. Through the rain-streaked passenger window, he could see her more clearly now, a girl, maybe 16 or 17, wearing a thin jacket that had long since soaked through. Her dark hair was plastered to her face, and she sat with her knees drawn up, arms wrapped tight around them, staring at nothing. She wasn't crying, wasn't calling for help, just existing, waiting for morning, maybe, or waiting for nothing at all. Evan sat there for a long moment, his hands still on the steering wheel, watching the rain cascade down the windshield. He thought about Ruby, only 8 years old, and what he'd want someone to do if she were ever in trouble. The thought made his chest tight. He grabbed the emergency blanket from the back seat, one of those cheap foil things that never kept anyone warm, but were better than nothing, and opened his door. The rain hit him immediately, cold and relentless, soaking through his warehouse jacket in seconds. The girl's head snapped up as he approached, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and defiance. She couldn't have been more than 17, he realized, but her eyes held something older, something tired. "Hey," Evan said, raising his voice over the rain. He held up the blanket, keeping his distance. "Laundromat's closed." "You got somewhere to go?" She stared at him, unmoving. "I'm fine, you're soaked through." He took a small step closer, then stopped when she tensed. "Look, I'm just offering a dry place for the night. I've got a couch, no strings. You can leave first thing in the morning." "Why?" The word came out flat, suspicious. Evan shrugged, rain running down his face. "Because you're sitting in the rain at midnight, and that's not fine. I've got a daughter about 10 years younger than you. I'd hope someone would do the same for her." The girl studied him for what felt like an eternity. He could see her weighing options, calculating risks, trying to decide if the danger of trusting was worse than another night in the cold. Finally she stood. She was taller than he'd thought, maybe 5'8", and rail-thin beneath the soaked jacket. Just for tonight, Evan agreed, holding out the blanket. She took it without touching his hand, wrapping it around her shoulders even though it did almost nothing against the rain. They walked to the car in silence and she climbed into the passenger seat, dripping water onto the worn upholstery. The drive to Evan's apartment took less than 10 minutes. He lived in a modest complex on the edge of town, the kind of place where the paint was always peeling and the parking lot lights only half worked. It wasn't much, but it was home. "I'm Evan, by the way," he said as they pulled into his spot. "Evan Brooks." The girl hesitated. "Lena, nice to meet you, Lena." He grabbed his thermos from the cup holder. "I've got some coffee left if you want it." "It's terrible, but it's hot." She nodded, and for the first time, something in her expression softened just slightly. Inside the apartment, Evan flicked on lights as they entered. The place was small, a living room that connected to a tiny kitchen, one bedroom, one bathroom, and everything showing the wear of two people trying to make ends meet. But it was clean. Ruby's drawings covered the refrigerator and a basket of folded laundry sat on the coffee table, waiting to be put away. "Bathroom's there if you want to dry off," Evan said, pointing down the short hallway. "I'll get you some dry clothes and set up the couch." Lena stood in the middle of the living room, dripping on the cheap laminate flooring, looking like she might bolt at any second. "You live here alone, with my daughter?" "She's at the neighbor's right now. I worked late." Evan moved to the linen closet, pulling out towels. "She's 8. You'll probably meet her in the morning." "Oh," Lena took the towels he offered. Thank you. Don't mention it. While she was in the bathroom, Evan moved quickly. He pulled sheets from the closet and made up the couch, grabbing one of his old t-shirts and a pair of sweatpants that would be too big but were better than nothing. He could hear the show, running. She'd found it on her own, and he used the time to check his phone. 3 texts from Mrs. Chen, all saying Ruby was fine, asleep in the guest room. No rush to pick her up. He sent back a quick thank you, then put on a pot of coffee. The terrible stuff from his thermos had gone cold. When Lena emerged 20 minutes later, she looked different, younger somehow. The wet, defensive shell had cracked just enough to reveal a kid underneath, scared, exhausted, and trying hard not to show either. Her hair was still damp, but no longer plastered to her face, and she'd put on the clothes he'd left outside the bathroom door. Coffee? Evan asked, holding up a mug. Please. She sat carefully on the edge of the couch like she was ready to run if needed. He poured 2 cups and brought them over, sitting in the worn armchair across from her. For a moment, they just sat in silence, the rain still beating against the windows. You don't have to tell me anything, Evan said finally, but if you're in trouble, if someone's looking for you, I'm not in trouble. The words came too quick, too defensive. Okay. He sipped his coffee, wincing at the bitterness. Then, you're just a girl who really likes sitting in the rain at midnight. Despite herself, Lena's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Something like that. Well, the couch is yours for the night. There's more coffee in the morning. And I can drive you wherever you need to go. Why are you doing this? The question burst out of her, raw and genuine. You don't know me. I could be anyone. Evan sat down, his mug, and leaned back in his chair. My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. Ruby was 5. He saw Lena's eyes widen slightly, but he continued. For about 6 months after, I was barely holding it together, working double shifts, trying to keep Ruby fed and safe, and failing most days. Mrs. Chen, the neighbor. She just started showing up, bringing dinner, watching Ruby when I had to work late, never asked for anything back, never made me feel small for needing help. He paused, looking at the mug in his hands. I asked her once why she did it. You know what she said, because someone did it for me once. That's it. That's the whole reason. Lena was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry about your wife. Me too. Evan stood, picking up his mug. Get some sleep. We'll figure out tomorrow. When it comes. He headed toward his bedroom, then stopped at the doorway. Lena, for what it's worth, I'm glad you're here and not still sitting in that rain. She nodded, and he thought he saw the shine of tears in her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. Evan barely slept that night. He kept listening for the sound of the front door, convinced he'd wake to find her gone. But when morning light filtered through his bedroom curtains, and he emerged in his faded robe, she was still there, curled up on the couch under the blanket he'd given her, fast asleep. He moved quietly to the kitchen and started breakfast. Ruby would be awake soon at Mrs. Chen's, eager to come home, and he wanted to have something ready. Pancakes, he decided. Ruby loved pancakes, even when Evan inevitably burned half of them. He was mixing batter when Lena's voice came from behind him. You're really making breakfast. Evan turned to find her sitting up, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders like armor, her hair stuck up in odd directions, and she looked even younger in the morning light. I'm attempting breakfast, he corrected. Cass can't promise quality, but there will be quantity. I should probably go, but she didn't move. You should probably eat first. Evan poured batter onto the heated griddle where it immediately began to bubble and smoke slightly. I'm going to pick up Ruby in about 20 minutes. You're welcome to stay for pancakes. Or leave. Your choice. Lena Pohl led the blanket tighter. Your daughter, she won't be scared. Having a stranger here. Ruby, Evan laughed. Ruby's never met a stranger in her life. She'll probably ask you a million questions and demand to know your entire life story before you finish one pancake. That sounds exhausting. You have no idea. He flipped a pancake, feeling oddly pleased when it didn't immediately fall apart. But she's also the best person I know, so there's that. 20 minutes later, Evan returned with Ruby in tow. She burst through this door in her purple pajamas, her curly brown hair wild around her face, and stopped dead when she saw Lena sitting at their small kitchen table. Dad. Ruby's whisper was louder than most people's normal voices. There's a lady on our couch. That's Lena, Evan said, setting down Ruby's backpack. She's staying for breakfast. Lena, this is Ruby. Ruby, can you say hello like a normal human? Ruby approached the table with a confidence only 8-year-olds possessed, climbing into the chair next to Lena and peering at her with unconcealed curiosity. Why are you wearing Dad's clothes? Are you a giant, Ruby? It's okay. Lena's voice was quiet, but there was a hint of amusement in it. I'm not a giant. My clothes got wet in the rain. Oh, Ruby processed this information. Were you stuck outside? That happened to me once when I locked myself out. Mrs. Chen had to let me in. Did you lock yourself out? Something like that. Evan set a plate of slightly burnt pancakes on the table. Eat, both of you, and Ruby. Maybe let Lena have some quiet with her breakfast. I don't mind, Lena said, and to Evan's surprise, she seemed to mean it. She took a pancake, drowning it in syrup the way Ruby did. These are good. You're a terrible liar, Evan said, but I appreciate it. They ate in comfortable chaos. Ruby chattering about school, her friend Madison, who had brought a lizard for show and tell, and the art project they were doing with macaroni. Lena listened, occasionally answering Ruby's rapid-fire questions with soft, careful responses. Evan watched him over his coffee, something warm settling in his chest. Lena was good with Ruby, patient, kind, and Ruby, in her innocent way, was drawing Lena out of whatever shell she'd built around herself. After breakfast, while Ruby ran off to get dressed for the day, Lena helped Evan clear the table without being asked. She's sweet, Lena said, scraping plates into the trash. Your daughter. She is. Evan ran hot water in the sink, takes after her mother that way. I should go. Lena set down the plate she was holding. Thank you for the food and the couch and everything. Where will you go? I'll figure something out. Evan dried his hands on a dish towel, studying her. She was trying to look confident, but he could see the fear underneath the uncertainty. I've got an idea, he said slowly. And you can say no, that's fine, but hear me out. Lena crossed her arms, defensive again. What? My buddy Marcus runs a diner about 3 blocks from here. He's always complaining about being short-staffed. It's not glamorous, washing dishes, busting tables, that kind of thing. But it's cash under the table if you need it that way. And he doesn't ask questions. Why would you do that? Because you need work and Marcus needs help. And it seems like a solution that helps everyone. Evan shrugged. And because I've been where you are. Not the same circumstances, maybe, but I know what it's like to need a hand up. Lena was quiet for a long moment, her fingers picking at the hem of his borrowed t-shirt, just like that. You trust me enough to recommend me to your friend? I trust that you could have stolen half my stuff last night and didn't. I trust that you were kind to my daughter just now when you didn't have to be. That's enough for me. I don't have to be. That's enough for me. I don't have to be, to have anywhere to stay, Lena said quietly. I can't afford rent and I don't have references. And one thing at a time, Evan interrupted gently. First, let's see if Marcus has work. Then we figure out the rest. Why, the question again, but this time it sounded less defensive and more genuinely confused. Why do you keep helping me? Evan thought about it, about all the real answers, because he knew what it was like to be desperate, because his daughter was like to be desperate, because his daughter was watching and learning what kindness looked like, because someone had helped him once, and this was how you paid that forward. But what he said was simpler, because you needed a dry place to sleep, and I had a couch, because you're standing in my kitchen and I can help, that's all. Lena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. That's not all. Maybe not, Evan admitted, but it's enough to start with. The diner was called Marcus's Place, which showed a stunning lack of creativity, but made up for it in accuracy. It was the kind of establishment where the coffee was always hot, the bacon was always crispy, and Marcus knew every regular by name and order. Marcus himself was a big man with an even bigger laugh, and when Evan walked in with Lena trailing behind, his face split into a grin. Evan Brooks twice in 1 week. What's the occasion? Then his eyes landed on Lena, and his expression shifted to curiosity. And who's this? Marcus, this is Lena. She's looking for work. I thought you might be able to help. Marcus studied Lena with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen everything at least twice. You got experience? Some, Lena said, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. Bessing tables? Basic food, prep? I'm a fast learner. She reliable? Marcus directed the question at Evan. I believe so. Yes, good enough for me. Marcus grabbed the menu from the counter. Lena, you ever work a breakfast rush? Not exactly, but you're about to. We open in 45 minutes and my morning dishwasher just quit to go find himself in Colorado or some nonsense. You want the job? Lena blinked. Just like that. Just like that. Just like that. $8 an hour, cash if you need it that way. Tips if you help with tables. Show up on time. Work hard and we'll get along fine. Don't, and we won't. Simple as that. Yes, thank you. I'll take it. Good. There's an apron in the back. Get yourself situated and I'll show you the ropes. Marcus turned to Evan. You sticking around for coffee? Can't. Got to get Ruby to school. But thanks, Marcus. I owe you one. You don't owe me nothing. Just keep bringing me customers like this. One who actually want to work. Marcus clapped Evan on the shoulder. Now get out of here. Some of us have diners to run. Outside, Evan walked Lena toward the bus stop where he needed to catch his ride to drop Ruby at school. She walked beside him quietly, her hands shoved in the pockets of his sweatpants. I'll pay you back, she said suddenly, for the clothes and the food. And don't worry about it. I should give you my number in case you need to reach me about the clothes. Or she stopped, a flesh creeping up her neck. I don't have a phone. Evan pulled out his wallet and extracted a worn business card with his cell number scrolled on it. Here's mine. Marcus's place has a phone. You ever need anything, you call. Okay. Lena took the card like it was made of glass. Okay. The bus was pulling up to the stop and Evan could see Ruby bouncing in her seat through the window, waving frantically. That's my ride. You going to be all right? Yeah. Lena managed a small smile. Yeah, I think so. Good luck with the breakfast rush. As the bus pulled away, Evan watched through the window as Lena stood on the sidewalk, still holding his business card, looking smaller and more alone than anyone should ever look. Ruby climbed into his lap, chattering about waited, there Lena would come for dinner sometime. And Evan made non-committal sounds while his mind churned. He told himself he'd done enough, given her a night off the streets, helped her find work. That was more than most people would do. He could step back now, let her figure out the rest on her own, but even as he thought it, he knew he wouldn't. The next few days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Lena worked the morning shift at Marcus's place, and somehow, though Evan never asked exactly how, Marcus arranged for her to sleep in the small studio apartment above the diner that he used for storage. It wasn't much, Marcus reported when Evan stopped by for coffee, but it had a bed and a bathroom, and Lena kept it cleaner than he ever had. Evan didn't see her for those first few days. He was working his own shifts at the warehouse, getting Ruby to and from school, managing the endless logistics of single parenthood, but Marcus kept him updated. Girl's a worker, Marcus said on Thursday morning, pouring Evans his coffee. Shut up 15 minutes early every day this week. Customers love her. She's got this way of being friendly without being chatty. You know, and she stays late to help with prep for tomorrow. She doing okay otherwise. Marcus shrugged. She don't talk much about herself. Eats like she's afraid the food's going to disappear. But she seems, I don't know, less scared than when you brought her in. On Friday evening, Evan was walking home from the warehouse when he spotted Lena sitting on a bench outside the library, a stack of books beside her. She was reading intently, her finger following the lines of text, so focused she didn't notice him until he spoke. Hey there. She looked up, startled, then relaxed when she recognized him. Oh, hi, Marcus says. You're doing great at the diner. A hint of pride crossed her face. It's good work. I like it. Evan gestured to the book, catching up on reading, sort of. I didn't finish high school. The admission came reluctantly. Thought I should maybe try to do, educate myself. That's smart. Evan sat down on the other end of the bench, careful to leave space. Ruby's got a piano recital tomorrow afternoon at the community center. Nothing fancy, just her and about 15 other kids butchering Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. You're welcome to come if you want. Lena looked surprised. Really? Ruby asked if you'd be there. Apparently you made an impression with your pancake-eating technique. Despite herself, Lena laughed. A real laugh, not the careful, guarded sound she usually made. I have good pancake-eating technique. According to Ruby, it's second only to her own. Evan stood, brushing off his work pants. 2:00 at the community center on 5th Street. Number pressure. Either way. Okay, Lena said. I'll try to make it. She showed up at 1:55 wearing the same clothes Evan had first given her, now washed and cared for. Ruby spotted her immediately and dragged her to a seat in the 3rd row, chattering excitedly about her piece and how she'd only messed up twice in rehearsal, and how her piano teacher said she was improving. Evan watched from a few seats away as Lena listened with complete attention, asking questions and making Ruby giggle. When Ruby's turn came, and she did indeed butcher Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, though with enthusiasm, Lena applauded like she was at Carnegie Hall. Afterward, Evan took them both for ice cream at the shop down the street. Ruby got her usual chocolate chip, Lena chose vanilla with rainbow sprinkles, and Evan got his coffee-flavored monstrosity that both girls declared disgusting. This is nice, Ruby announced, swinging her legs from the tall chair. We should do this every week, right, Dad? Every week with Lena Ruby. Lena's got her own life. I'd like that, Lena interrupted quietly, if that would be okay. Ruby beamed. Evan felt something in his chest crack open just a little bit more. They walked Lena back toward the diner as the sun set, Ruby holding her hand and explaining in elaborate detail the plot of the book she was reading. When they reached Marcus's place, Ruby hugged Lena goodbye with the unself-conscious affection of childhood. "See you next week," Ruby called as she and Evan headed home. "See you next week," Lena echoed, and Evan saw her wipe her eyes quickly before turning away. That night after Ruby was asleep, Evan sat in his kitchen with a cup of tea and thought about the strange turn his life had taken. A week ago, he'd been just another exhausted single father going through the motions. Now, there was this girl, this kid really, who'd somehow become part of their routine. He told himself not to get attached, told himself she'd leave eventually, move on to wherever she'd been trying to get before the rain stopped her outside that laundromat. Told himself this was temporary. But when Ruby asked the next morning if Lena could come to her soccer game the following Saturday, Evan didn't hesitate. "I'll ask her," he said. And just like that, the temporary became something else, something more. Lena came to the soccer game, and the one after that, and the one after that. She started joining them for Sunday pancakes, which became a tradition neither Evan nor Ruby could imagine breaking. She'd show up at 9 o'clock in the morning with her hair still damp from the shower, help Evan burn breakfast, and listen to Ruby's endless stories about school and friends and the injustice of having to eat vegetables. 3 weeks in, Marcus pulled Evan aside during a coffee run. "I need to talk to you about Lena," Marcus said, his usual jovial expression replaced with something more serious. Evan's stomach dropped. "What happened? Did she do something?" E.g. wrong. Man, she's the best employee I've had in 5 years. Shows up early, stays late, never complains. Customers request her tables. Marcus poured coffee with practiced ease. "That's actually the problem. I don't follow. She's living in that storage room, Evan. It's got a bed and a bathroom, sure, but it's not a real apartment. No kitchen, barely any heat, and the hot water is unreliable at best. She's been buying cold sandwiches from the diner for dinner every night because she's got nowhere to cook." Evan rubbed his face. He'd known the living situation wasn't ideal, but he hadn't realized it was that bad. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting you've got a spare bedroom that Ruby doesn't use anymore since you gave her the bigger room. I'm suggesting that girl needs a real home, and you've already basically adopted her anyway." "Marcus, I know what you're going to say. It's complicated. You barely know her. What if she's dangerous? All that." Marcus leaned against the counter. "But we both know you've already made up your mind. You just haven't admitted it yet." Evan drove to the diner that afternoon and found Lena wiping down tables after the lunch rush. She looked up when the bell chimed and her face brightened when she saw him. "Hey, this isn't your usual coffee time. Blake, I wanted to talk to you about something." Evan slid onto a stool at the counter. "You got a minute?" Lena set down her rag, weariness creeping into her expression. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, actually, you've done everything right, which is kind of the problem." He took a breath. Marcus told me about the storage room, about the conditions. Her cheeks flushed. "It's fine. It's way better than sleeping outside a laundromat." "I know, but that's a pretty low bar, Lena." Evan turned his coffee cup in circles on the counter. "I've got a spare bedroom. Used to be Ruby's before we rearranged last year. 'Tis small, but it's got a real bed, a closet, and the heat works. I'm offering it to you. No rent until you're back on your feet." Lena stared at him. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. You barely know me. I could be anyone. I could steal from you or hurt Ruby." "Or could you?" Evan met her eyes. "Would you?" "No, of course not. But then that settles it." He stood. "Look, I'm not trying to pressure you. If you'd rather stay in the storage room, that's your choice. But the offer's there. A real bedroom, access to the kitchen, a place where you can actually live instead of just survive. Think about it." Lena's hands were shaking. "Why do you keep doing this? Helping me. Nobody just does that without wanting something." Evan thought about lying, about giving her some easy answer that wouldn't scare her off. But he'd never been good at lying, and he didn't want to start now. "My wife Sarah, before she got sick, we used to talk about fostering. She grew up in the system, bounced around between homes that didn't care. She always said that if we ever had the chance to give a kid a safe place, we'd take it." He paused. "I know you're not a kid looking for foster care. You're almost an adult and this isn't some official arrangement, but you need a safe place and I've got one. Sarah would have been the first one to offer. I'm just doing what she would have done." Lena's eyes were wet. "I can't pay you, didn't ask you to. I can't promise I'll stay forever. I might need to leave, and you can leave whenever you want. The bedroom will still be there if you change your mind. Evan pulled out his keys and removed one from the ring, setting it on the counter. Think about it. No pressure, but if you decide yes, you're welcome anytime. He left the key there and walked out before she could argue further. That night, around 8:30, there was a knock at the door. Evan opened it to find Anna standing in the hallway, a single backpack slung over her shoulder and tears streaming down her face. "I don't know how to do this," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to let people help me. I don't know how to trust that this is real. Then, we'll figure it out together." Evan stepped aside. "Come on in." Ruby, who'd been pretending to do homework at the kitchen table while actually eavesdropping, let out a whoop of joy. "Lena's moving in? Really? This is the best day ever. Ruby, give her some space." But Lena was already laughing through her tears as Ruby crashed into her with a hug. "I'm so glad you're here. I can show you my room and we can watch movies together, and you can help me with my math homework because Dad's terrible at fractions." "Hey now," Evan protested. But he was smiling. That first night, Lena sat on the edge of the bed in her new room, Ruby's old room with its faded flower wallpaper, and the slight water stain on the ceiling that looked like a rabbit if you squinted, and tried to process what had happened. She'd gone from homeless to employed to actually living in a real home all in less than a month. It felt impossible. It felt fragile. Like a soap bubble that would pop the moment she let herself believe it was real. But when she emerged for breakfast the next morning and found Evan already burning pancakes while Ruby set the table with mismatched plates, something in her chest unclenched just slightly. "Morning," Evan said, flipping a pancake that immediately fell apart. "Coffee, please." Lena moved to help Ruby with the syrup. "Can I do anything?" "You can tell Dad he's terrible at pancakes." Ruby stage whispered, "I heard that, and I'm not terrible. I'm consistently mediocre, which is an achievement in itself." Lena found herself laughing. Really laughing. And for a moment, everything felt almost normal. Almost like a real family. The next few eeks brought a rhythm she'd never experienced before. She'd wake up to the smell of coffee, and the sound of Ruby's morning chaos. Shoes lost. Homework forgotten. The daily crisis of what to wear. She'd help get Ruby ready, walk with them to the bus stop, then head to her shift at the diner. Evenings were homework help and dinner prep, and Ruby's constant chatter about her day. It was ordinary, beautifully and possibly ordinary. Marcus noticed the change in her. "You look different," he said one morning as she prepped coffee. "Happier. I feel different," Lena admitted. "It's weird. Good. Weird. But weird. Evan treating you right." Lena struggled for words. "He's the most decent person I've ever met. Him and Ruby both. Sometimes I don't know what to do with it." Marcus smiled. "Get used to it. That family's got a way of making you feel like you belong whether you plan to or not." But not everything was smooth. Lena had nightmares sometimes. Jolting awake with her heart racing, convinced she was back on the streets, or worse the first time it happened, she woke the whole apartment with her screaming. Evan appeared in her doorway in his ratty bathrobe, concern etched on his face. "You okay?" Lena pulled her knees to her chest, trying to stop shaking. "I'm fine." "Sorry I woke you." "You didn't answer my question." Evan leaned against the doorframe, making no move to come closer. "You okay? Just a bad dream. Want to talk about it?" "No." The word came out harsher than she intended. No. Thank you. I'm fine." Evan was quiet for a moment. "My wife used to have nightmares after the diagnosis, after the treatment started. She'd wake up thinking she was still in the hospital, still feeling sick. I learned pretty quick that sometimes the best thing I could do was just sit with her. Not talk, not try to fix it, just be there." He gestured to the hallway. "I'm going to make tea, if you will, and some come on out. If you want to be alone, that's fine too." He left, and Lena sat in the darkness of her room, listening to the sounds of him moving around the kitchen. After a few minutes she got up and joined him. They sat at the small kitchen table, 2 mugs of chamomile tea between them, and didn't talk about the nightmare. Instead, Evan told her about the time Ruby convinced him to let her cut his hair, and he'd ended up looking like he'd lost a fight with a lawnmower. Lena found herself laughing, the tension slowly leaving her shoulders. "Thank you," she said as they were putting the mugs in the sink, "for not making me explain. Everyone's got stuff they're not ready to talk about." Evan said simply, "When you're ready, I'll listen. Until then, I make a mean cup of tea." Spring turned to early summer, and with it came small changes. Lena started putting money toward groceries without being asked. She picked up extra shifts at the diner and began to build a small savings. She enrolled in online GED classes, studying late into the night at the kitchen table, while Evan worked on inventory spreadsheets from the warehouse. Ruby's 9th birthday arrived on a warm Saturday in June. Lena had been secretly planning for weeks, coordinating with Marcus to use the diner's kitchen after hours. She'd learned that Ruby's favorite cake was chocolate with vanilla frosting, and she was determined to make it from scratch. The night before the birthday, after Ruby was asleep, Lena snuck out to the diner. Marcus had left her a key and a note. "Everything you need is in the walk-in. Don't burn my kitchen down." She'd never made a cake before, not a real one from scratch with layers and frosting and everything, but she'd watched enough cooking shows during slow afternoons at the library. And how hard could it be? Very hard, as it turned out. The first attempt burned. The second call asked in the middle. The third looked like it had been assembled by someone who'd never seen a cake before. At 2 o'clock in the morning, covered in flour and near tears, Lena was ready to give up when the diner's back door opened and Evan walked in. "Marcus texted me," he explained, taking in the disaster zone of the kitchen, "said you might need backup." "I wanted to do this myself," Lena said, her voice small. "I wanted to give Ruby something special, something homemade, but I can't even make a stupid cake without ruining it." Evan surveyed the wreckage. "You know what Ruby's going to remember about her 9th birthday, not whether the cake was perfect. She's going to remember that you cared enough to try, that you stayed up all night in a diner kitchen because you wanted to make her happy. That's a nice thought, but it doesn't change the fact that I have no cake, and the party's in 12 hours. Then it's a good thing you've got help." Evan rolled up his sleeves. "I'll preheat the oven. You get the ingredients ready. We're doing this together." They worked side by side until dawn, and by the time the sun came up, they had a slightly lopsided but fully assembled chocolate cake with vanilla frosting. It wasn't perfect. The layers didn't quite line up, and the frosting had a few fingerprints where they tried to smooth it, but it was made with care. "It's beautiful," Lena said, exhausted and covered in batter. "It's a disaster," Evan countered, but he was smiling. "Ruby's going to love it." She did. When she came home from her morning soccer practice to find the apartment decorated with homemade streamers and her slightly wonky cake on the table, Ruby burst into tears of joy. "You made this for me." She looked between Evan and Lena with wide eyes. "Lena made it," Evan said. "I just provided moral support and cleaned up the catastrophes." Ruby hugged Lena so hard she nearly knocked tea over. "This is the best birthday ever." "Can we eat cake for breakfast?" "Absolutely not," Evan said. "We can have a small piece," Lena, catching Evan's look, "after you eat some actual breakfast." They compromised with eggs and toast, followed by cake, and Ruby declared it the perfect meal. Later there was a party at the park with Ruby's friends, games, and chaos, and too much sugar. Lena helped supervise, feeling strange and wonderful to be included in something so normal, so family-like. That evening, after all the guests had gone home and Ruby had crashed on the couch in a sugar coma, Evan found Lena cleaning up the kitchen. "You didn't have to do all this," he said, picking up a dish towel to help dry. "The cake, the party planning, everything. I wanted to." Lena scrubbed at a stubborn piece of frosting on a plate. "Ruby's been so kind to me. You both have. I just wanted to give something back. You give back every day, helping with Ruby, contributing to groceries, being part of this family." Evan paused. "That's what you are, you know, part of this family." Lena's hands stilled in the soapy water. "Don't say that." "Why not? It's true. Because families don't last. People leave or they change their minds," or her voice cracked. "I can't let myself believe this is permanent. I can't." Evan sat down the dish towel and leaned against the counter, looking at her with those kind, tired eyes. "What happened to you, Lena? Who hurt you so badly that you can't believe someone might want you to stay?" For a long moment, Lena thought about deflecting, about changing the subject the way she always did. But something about the late hour and the exhaustion in Evan's patient, non-judgmental expression made her want to tell the truth. "My father," she said quietly, "Charles Hale. You probably haven't heard of him. He keeps a low profile, but he's rich. Really rich. Tech industry, money." Evan's brows rose, but he didn't interrupt. "My mom died when I was 12. After that, it was just me and him, except it was never really us. It was his empire, his business, his reputation. I was just another asset to manage." She pulled her hands from the water, drying them on her jeans. "He controlled everything. What I wore, who I talked to, where I went. I was supposed to be perfect, the perfect daughter, the perfect A's, the perfect reflection of his success." That sounds suffocating. It was. And when I tried to push back, when I wanted to go to public school or have normal friends or just exist as my own person, he'd remind me how much I owed him, how he'd given me everything, how ungrateful I was. Lena's voice hardened. So, one night about 2 months ago I left, took what I could carry and just walked out. Does he know where you are? I don't think so. I've been careful. No phone, no social media, cash only. I figured he'd look for me in the beginning, but I'm hoping he eventually just writes me off as a loss and moves on. She laughed bitterly. That's probably the best I can hope for from him. Indifference. Evan. Evan was quiet for a moment, processing. I'm sorry. No kid should have to run away to feel free. I'm not a kid anymore. You're 17. That's still a kid in my book. He picked up the dish towel again. Does this change how you feel about being here? Are you worried he'll find you? Sometimes, but mostly, I just feel guilty. For what? For lying to you. For letting you and Ruby get attached when I might have to run at any moment. For she gestured helplessly. For all of it. Lena, look at me. Evan waited until she met his eyes. You don't owe me your whole story. You never did. What matters is that you're here now. You're safe and you're part of our lives. If your father shows up, we'll deal with it together. You say that now, but you don't know what he's like. He has lawyers and money and we have something he doesn't. Evan interrupted gently. We have people who actually care about each other. That counts for more than you think. Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that care and community could stand up to wealth and power. But she'd seen too much to be that naive. Still, for tonight, in this small kitchen with this kind man who kept helping her for no reason, other than it was the right thing to do, she let herself pretend. The summer deepened, bringing lazy days and the kind of heat that made the whole town slow down. Lena worked her shifts at the diner, banked money, and studied for her GED. Ruby finished 3rd grade with decent grades and a concerning number of disciplinary notes about talking in class. One evening in late July, Lena was walking home from the diner when she noticed a black sedan parked across the street from the apartment building. It was expensive, sleek, completely out of place in this neighborhood of rusted Hondas and old pickup trucks. Her stomach dropped. She ducked into the corner store, pretending to browse while watching through the window. The sedan didn't move. Nobody got out. Maybe she was being paranoid. Maybe it was just someone visiting a resident. Maybe the driver's side door opened, and a man in a dark suit emerged. He scanned the street with the practiced efficiency of someone trained to notice things, and even from this distance, Lena recognized the cold professionalism of her father's security team. They'd found her. Lena's first instinct was to run, just take off, hop a bus to anywhere, disappear before they could close in. But the thought of leaving Evan and Ruby without explanation, of them coming home to find her gone, made her chest ache. She pulled out the flip phone she bought last month with her tip money, her one concession to safety, and dialed Evan's number with shaken. He answered on the second ring. Lena, everything okay? No, there's someone watching the apartment. Black sedan, guy in a suit. I think my father found me. Silence. Then where are you? Corner store on 5th. Stay there. I'm getting Ruby and we're coming to you. 10 minutes. Lena paced the aisles of the corner store, pretending to shop while watching the street. The man got back in the sedan, but didn't leave. He was waiting for something or someone. True to his word, Evan appeared 9 minutes later with Ruby and Tao. They slipped into the store and Evan immediately moved to the window, assessing the situation. That's definitely surveillance, he said quietly. Professional setup. Dad, what's happening? Ruby's voice was small, scared in a way Lena had never heard before. Everything's fine, sweetheart. We're just being careful. Evan squeezed her shoulder, then turned to Lena. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to Mrs. Chen's for tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out next steps. I should just go, Lena said. If I leave, they'll follow me, and you two will be safe. Absolutely not. We stick together. Evan's voice was firm. Come on, back exit. They slipped out through the store's rear entrance and made their way to Mrs. Chen's apartment via the back stairs. The elderly woman took one look at their faces and ushered them inside without questions. That night, while Ruby slept in Mrs. Chen's guest room, the adults sat around the kitchen table drinking tea that was somehow both too strong and too weak. You should have told me it was this serious, Mrs. Chen said, not unkindly. A man like that with resources, he won't stop looking. I know. Lena stared into her tea. I'm sorry I brought this to your door. To all your doors. Stop apologizing, Evan said. We knew this might happen eventually. We just need to be smart about it. Smart how? He has investigators, security, tie teams, probably lawyers on retainer. What do we have? Each other, Mrs. Chen said simply, and sometimes that's enough. But lying in Mrs. Chen's spare bed later that night, listening to Ruby's quiet breathing from across the room, Lena wasn't so sure. She'd built something real here, something precious, and now her past was catching up to destroy it. She thought about running, about slipping out before dawn and disappearing into some new city, some new life. Evan and Ruby would be hurt, but they'd recover. Better that than dragging them into whatever confrontation was coming. But as she watched Ruby sleep, one hand curled under her chin like a much younger child, Lena realized something that terrified her. She didn't want to run anymore. She wanted to stay. She wanted to fight for this fragile, beautiful thing they'd built, even if it meant facing her father, even if it meant risking everything. The next morning arrived too quickly. Lena woke to find Evan already up sitting at Mrs. Chen's kitchen table with his phone and a notepad, looking like he hadn't slept much either. "Coffee's fresh," he said without looking up. Mrs. Chen went to the market. "Ruby's still asleep." Lena poured herself a cup and sat down across from him. "What are you doing, research?" "I've been looking up your father." He turned the phone toward her, showing an article from a tech industry magazine. The headline read, "Charles Hale expands empire with latest acquisition." The photo showed a man in his 50s with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Lena's stomach clenched. That's him? He's been in the news a lot lately. New deals, expansion into international markets, and Evan scrolled down. This article from about 6 weeks ago mentions his daughter's unfortunate disappearance and his hopes for her safe return. Let me guess, he's painted himself as the concerned father, worried sick about his troubled runaway daughter. Pretty much. There's even a quote about how he just wants you home safe, how he understands you're going through a difficult time. Evan set the phone down. Public sympathy is entirely on his side. Of course it is. He's good at that, controlling the narrative, making himself look like the victim. Lena wrapped her hands around the coffee mug, seeking its warmth. "So, what do we do? First, we go back to the apartment. If they're watching, we don't hide. We act normal, like we've got nothing to be afraid of. That's insane. Maybe, but running makes you look guilty. Looking scared makes you look like you need saving." Evan's expression was serious. "I know this isn't what you want to hear, but at some point you're going to have to face him. The question is whether you do it on his terms or yours." Lena thought about this as she sipped her coffee. Everything in her screamed to run, to avoid confrontation, to disappear before things got worse. But Evan was right. She couldn't run forever, and if she was going to stand her ground, she needed to do it while she still had people in her corner. "Okay," she said finally. "We go back. We act normal. And when he shows up, because he will show up, we deal with it together." Evan added together. They went back to the apartment mid-morning after Ruby woke up, and Mrs. Chen returned with fresh pastries that she insisted they take home. The black sedan was gone, but Lena could feel eyes on them as they climbed the stairs to the second floor. Inside, everything looked exactly as they'd left it. No signs of forced entry, nothing disturbed, but the sense of violation remained. Her father knew where she was. The small sanctuary she'd built was no longer safe. Ruby sensed the tension immediately. "Are we in trouble?" she asked, her voice small. "No, sweetheart, we're fine." "Where?" Evan pulled her into a hug. "But we need to be extra careful for a little while." "Okay. No going anywhere alone. And if you see anyone you don't recognize hanging around, you tell me or Lena right away." "Is this because of Lena's dad?" Lena froze. She hadn't realized Ruby knew anything about her father. "I'm not dumb," Ruby said, looking between them. "I heard you guys talking last night. Lena's dad is looking for her, and he's not a nice person." Evan sighed. "You're too smart for your own good. You know that. I get it from you." Ruby turned to Lena. "Are you going to have to leave?" "I don't know," Lena said honestly. "I hope not. But Ruby, if something happens, if things get complicated, I want you to know that being here with you and your dad has been the best thing that's happened to me. No matter what comes next." Ruby's eyes filled with tears. "You're not allowed to leave. You're part of our family now, and families stick together." "Ruby's right," Evan said quietly. "Whatever happens, we face it together." The next 2 days were tense, but uneventful. Lena went to her shifts at the diner. Evan went to work at the warehouse. Ruby went to her summer day camp. They maintained their routines, but there was an undercurrent of waiting, of anticipating the other shoe to drop. It dropped on Wednesday afternoon. Lena was wiping down tables at the diner when Marcus called her to the front. "Someone here to see you," he said, his expression troubled. The man waiting by the register wasn't her father. He was younger, maybe 40, with the bland good looks of someone who worked hard to be forgettable. He wore an expensive suit and carried a leather portfolio. "Miss Hale," he said with a professional smile, "my name is Robert Morrison. I'm an attorney representing your father. Do you have a moment to talk?" Lena's first instinct was to refuse to tell him to get out, but she remembered Evan's words about facing this on her own terms, about not looking scared. 5 minutes, she said, and it's just Lena. They sat in a booth by the window. Morrison opened his portfolio and extracted several documents. "Your father is very concerned about you," he began. "He's been searching for you since you left, and he's relieved to finally know you're safe." "How did you find me?" "That's not important. What matters is that Mr. Pretended. That's not important. What matters is that Mr. Hale wants you to come home. He understands you've been going through a difficult time, and he's willing to overlook this entire episode if you return willingly. Overlook it." Lena felt anger rising in her chest, like it was some teenage tantrum instead of me escaping a prison. Morrison's expression didn't change. "I understand you're upset, but you're still a minor, Miss Hale. Legally, your father has every right to bring you home with or without your cooperation. He's trying to do this the easy way out of respect for you. Respect, he doesn't know the meaning of the word. Be that as it may, the law is clear. You're 17. You can't simply decide to live on your own, especially not in." He glanced around the diner with barely concealed disdain. "Circumstances like these. I'm not living on my own. I have a home, a job, people who care about me. You have a man twice your age who took in a vulnerable teenage girl. Do you understand how that looks?" Morrison leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Hale could have the police involved in a matter of hours. He could raise questions about the appropriateness of your living situation, about whether this Evan Brooks has ulterior motives. He could make life very difficult for everyone involved." The threat was clear: come home quietly, or her father would destroy everything and everyone she cared about. "I need time to think," Lena said, her voice shaking despite her best efforts. "Of course, Mr. Hale is staying at the Grand View Hotel downtown. He'd like to see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock, room 412. Morrison stood, leaving a business card on the table. "I hope you'll make the right choice, Miss Hale, for everyone's sake." After he left, Lena sat in the booth, staring at the business card. Marcus slid into the seat across from her. "You okay?" He threatened to go after Evan, to make it look like something it's not. Lena's hands were shaking. He said he'd call the police, make accusations. Would those accusations stick? Probably not. But they don't have to stick to ruin someone's life, do they? Just the investigation, the questions, the looks from neighbors. That's enough. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. If I go back, I'm trapped again. But if I don't, my father destroys Evan and Ruby out of spite." She looked up at Marcus, tears streaming down her face. "How is that a choice?" "It's not," Marcus said gently. "It's a threat disguised as a choice. But here's the thing about bullies, even rich ones. They're counting on you being too scared to call their bluff." "You think he's bluffing?" "I think he's used to getting his way because people roll over when he makes threats, but I also think you're tougher than he gives you credit for." Marcus squeezed her hand. "Talk to Evan. Don't make this decision alone." That evening, after Ruby went to bed, Lena told Evan everything. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as she explained Morrison's threats. "He can't actually do anything," Evan said when she finished. "You're living here with appropriate supervision. You're working. You're pursuing your education. There's nothing inappropriate about this situation. But he can make it look inappropriate. He can start an investigation, get social services involved, make Ruby's life miserable with questions and interviews." Lena's voice cracked. "I won't let him hurt you, too, because of me." "So, what's your plan? Go back to him. Live the rest of your life in a gilded cage because he threatened the right people. What else can I do?" Evan stood and paced the small living room. "We fight back. We get our own lawyer. We document everything. We make it clear that you're here by choice and you're being cared for properly." "With what money?" "Legal fees cost thousands and my father has unlimited resources. We can't win that fight, maybe not in court, but there are other ways to fight." Evan stopped pacing and looked at her. "Your father cares about his reputation, right? His public image more than anything." "Then we make it public. We tell your story, the real story, not his version. We let people know what kind of man Charles Hale really is." Lena shook her head. "He controls the narrative. He has PR people, media connections. Anything we say, he'll spin it to make me look like a troubled kid and him like a concerned father, unless we have proof, evidence of how he treated you, why you left. Evan sat back down. Do you have anything? Messages, recordings, anything that shows what he's really like? I left everything behind. My phone, my laptop. He monitored all of it. Anyway, the only thing I took was my mother's necklace. Lena touched the small silver pendant she always wore, hidden under her shirt. It's the only thing of hers he didn't control. They sat in heavy silence, both trying to find a solution that didn't exist. Finally, Lena spoke. I have to meet with him tomorrow. At least hear what he has to say. Not alone, you don't. Evan, not alone. He repeated firmly. If you're going to face him, I'm coming with you. Non-negotiable. He'll try to intimidate you. Let him try. Evan's expression was steely. I've dealt with bullies before. Rich ones aren't that different from any other kind. The next afternoon, they left Ruby with Mrs. Chen and drove to the Grandview Hotel. It was the nicest place in town. All marble floors and crystal chandeliers, the kind of establishment that made Evan's thrift store jacket and Lena's diner uniform look painfully out of place. The elevator ride to the fourth floor felt interminable. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs, and she had to resist the urge to hit the emergency stop button and stay suspended between floors forever. You don't have to do this, Evan said quietly. We can leave right now. No, I need to face him. I need to prove to myself that I can. She took a deep breath as the elevator doors opened. But I'm glad you're here. Room 412 was at the end of a long hallway. Before Lena could knock, the door opened and there stood Robert Morrison. Miss Hale, Mr. Hale is expecting you. His eyes slid to Evan with disapproval. Though I don't believe Mr. Brooks was invited. He's with me, Lena said. Both of us or neither of us. Morrison hesitated, then stepped aside. Very well. The suite was obscenely luxurious, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the town, furniture that probably cost more than Evan's entire apartment, and sitting in a leather armchair like it was a throne, was Charles Hale. He looked older than his photos, though still distinguished with his silver hair and expensive suit. When he saw Lena, his expression shifted through several emotions too quickly to read before settling on concerned relief. Lena, thank heavens, he stood, taking a step toward her before stopping when she flinched back. I've been so worried. Have you? It wasn't a question. Of course you're my daughter. When you disappeared, I thought he broke off, seemingly overcome with emotion. I thought something terrible had happened to you. Something terrible did happen to me. Something terrible did happen to me. That's why I left. Charles's expression hardened almost imperceptibly before the concerned father mask slipped back into place. I know we've had our disagreements, B. I know we've had our disagreements. You running away wasn't the answer. You should have talked to me. I tried talking to you for 5 years. You never listened. I'm listening now. Charles gestured to the expensive couch. Please sit. Let's discuss this like adults. Lena didn't move. There's nothing to discuss. I'm not coming back. You're 17, Lena. You're still a minor. Still my responsibility. Legally, you don't have a choice in the matter. Actually, she does. Evan spoke for the first time, his voice calm, but firm. In this state, a 17-year-old can petition for emancipation, especially if they can demonstrate stable living conditions and the ability to support themselves. Lena has both. Charles's attention shifted to Evan, and his expression turned cold. And you are Evan Brooks. I'm Lena's friend, and she's been staying with my family. Yes. The warehouse worker playing savior. Charles's tone dripped with condescension. Tell me, Mr. Brooks, do you often take in teenage girls? Does that not strike you as inappropriate? What strikes me as inappropriate? What strikes me as inappropriate is a father who controlled his daughter so completely that she had to run away in the middle of the night to feel free. Evan didn't rise to the bait. Lena is a guest in my home. Nothing more, nothing less. She has her own room. She works. She's pursuing her education. Everything is completely above board. I'm sure that's what you tell yourself, but I wonder what social services would think about the arrangement. What a judge might think if I pursued custody enforcement. Charles smiled, but it was all threat. I have resources you can't imagine, Mr. Brooks. Lawyers who could tie you up in court for years. Investigators who could find every parking ticket, every late payment, every tiny mistake you've ever made, and use it to paint you as unfit to care for a vulnerable teenager. You're threatening the wrong person, Lena said, stepping between them. Evan has Dawn. Nothing but help me if you want to threaten someone. Threaten me, but leave him and his daughter out of this. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm simply stating facts. Charles's voice was reasonable, rational, which somehow made it worse. You're my daughter. I have a legal right and a moral obligation to ensure your safety and well-being. These people, he gestured dismissively at Evan, cannot provide for you the way I can. You belong at home, finishing your education properly, preparing for your future. You mean preparing to be your perfect puppet, going to the right schools, marrying the right person, living the life you've planned for me, without any say in what I actually want. I'm trying to give you opportunities most people can only dream of. Do you have any idea how privileged you are? How many doors my name opens? I don't want your doors. I don't want your money or your name or your version of success. Lena's voice rose. I want to live my own life, make my own choices, even if those choices lead to a small apartment and a job at a diner. At least they're mine. Charles's mask finally cracked, showing the anger beneath. You're being childish and ungrateful. You think working at some greasy diner and living in poverty is freedom. It's stupidity. You'll regret this when you're older. Maybe. But at least it'll be my regret, my choice, my life. You're not old enough to make these decisions. That's why minors have parents, to protect them from their own poor judgment, to protect them or to control them. Lena shot back. Because from where I'm standing, this looks a lot more like control than protection. Charles took a deep breath, visibly collecting himself. When he spoke again, his voice was calmer, more calculated. I can see you're not ready to be reasonable. That's fine. Take some time to think about what I've said. But understand this, I will not allow my daughter to throw her life away because of some teenage rebellion. If you don't come home willingly, I will pursue every legal avenue available to bring you back. And Mr. Brooks here will find himself under investigation for harboring a runaway minor, possible exploitation. Whatever charges my attorneys can make stick, those charges won't stick because they're not true, Evans said evenly. The truth is surprisingly irrelevant when it comes to ruining someone's reputation. An investigation alone would be enough to cost you your job, your standing in the community, possibly even custody of your own daughter while they sort everything out. Charles's smile was predatory. Is Lena worth that risk? Lena felt like she'd been punched. This was exactly what she'd feared. Her father using Evan and Ruby as weapons to force her compliance. Don't answer that, she said to Evan, then to her father. You're a monster. I'm a father who wants his daughter home safely. If that makes me a monster in your eyes, so be it. Charles moved toward the sweets bar, pouring himself a drink. You have 24 hours to decide. Come home.